Hi there, I'm Michael Hill with Canine Chronicle TV, and I'm so excited to be here today with Mr. Jeffrey Pepper of Pepper Hill Kennels. How did you first get started in the sport of dogs?
I bought a pet golden back in 1968 and wanted him to be obedient because I was living in an apartment at the time, went to some obedience classes, and he did quite well. The instructor said, you really should go to some mat shows and show him there. So I took him to a mat show in New Jersey, and as I was paying my $1 entry fee, and that's what it was back then, another person came over with a golden and said, oh, he's very pretty, have you entered him in the show? And I said, he's here for obedience. Now, I paid $150 for him, but he was from a very well-bred litter. And, well, he was my pet.
Yeah.
So, long story short, I put him in conformation. I said, I don't know what to do, and the guy said, don't worry about it, just watch what everybody else does. It's a mat show, it's for fun.
Yeah.
Okay, well, those days mat shows were, that one was like 500-600 dogs, and that was not unusual. No, they would, I ran one later that was over 1,000. Yeah.
You don't have them?
No. Well, mat shows are pretty much gone now.
Yeah.
At any rate, he went high in trial and best in match.
Pretty good start.
So, it was a hell of a start. So he beat 500 odd dogs in conformation and was high in trial with a perfect 200. At a match show. So I still remember I got this little butter dish, you know, like stainless with a top on it and whatever. That was the trophy for best in show. And as they say in Spain, I was hooked.
Who did you start working with at the beginning to learn from? Who taught you dogs and breed?
Well, the first point, I went to mat shows and I learned from others. Mat shows were a big deal in those days. You had, because that's where everybody did their learning. And it's a shame we don't have them anymore, to be honest with you. The other people at the shows were always very helpful, and we did enough winning with the dog, my former wife and I, and so we decided to try a point show. And the first point show we went to was the 1973 Golden Retriever Club of America National Specialty, which happened to be in New Jersey. And he placed in his class and in obedience, and it went from there. In those days, you went to a show and basically everybody stayed all day. You know, you would cheer for whoever it was that won the breed on the day, and stay to watch the group. So you learned a lot about all breeds, not just your own breed. There was a lot of socialization that went on, a lot of chatting, a lot of sharing of information. I remember I bred my dog to a bitch, and there was one puppy in the litter that was monarchic. And I remember saying to a fellow exhibitor I was talking to, who happened to be a judge as well, you know, I didn't understand how that happened because he had both, and you know, why would that be? And he said, oh, well, you have so-and-so in your dog's pedigree, and he would occasionally throw puppies that were monarchic. Well, that was a very useful piece of information, particularly when you were breeding, and of course he told me the name of the dog, and I remembered that, and when we did any further breedings, I would avoid that pedigree, that dog being in the pedigree. So those kinds of information was shared freely, and if you stop and think about it, there's a huge amount of valuable information that you could pick up through this informal mentoring which was done, but you didn't have the competitiveness that we have today, where I don't, you don't talk to anybody else, and yeah, and you can't say anything bad about anybody's dog because you're going to get sued or you're going to get slammed on Facebook or whatever. So the sharing of information is gone.
It kind of defeats the objective evaluation process.
Exactly. And then by staying and watching your dog's breed in its group, guess what? Your group wasn't always first. So you wound up watching the breed winners in a number of groups. And almost through osmosis, you developed an eye for what a good schnoodlehound was, because there it was in the group on a regular basis. So not only did you learn what a good golden was, you learned what a good wire fox terrier was, or what a good Newfoundland was, or whatever it happened to be. Nowadays, people tend to, before COVID, show and go just like they are now with COVID. By not staying and watching even the judging of their own breed, I've seen people, they don't go winner's dog, they leave. They don't even watch the bitch judging. How do you learn if you don't watch what's going on? Why did these dogs win? And try and puzzle it out. And if you don't know, be able to talk to somebody who can say to you, well, this was a little stronger in the rear, or he really likes this type, and look at all of them are similar in style. Yeah, exactly.
And that probably makes a big difference for breed culture and even just culture in the sport as well, right?
My goal, our goal, right from the time that we really started breeding seriously, was I wanted to eventually produce, I had pie in the sky dreams, I wanted to eventually produce a national specialty best of breed winner and an all breed best in show winner. Not necessarily the same dog, but that was my ultimate goal. That's what I wanted to do. And interestingly and fortunately enough, accomplished that goal, not only in Goldens but in PBGVs as well, which is the other breed that we bred extensively.
How did you get into the PBGVs?
It's a funny story. Back in the late 70s, Bill Traynor, who was a professional handler on the East Coast, was showing a wire-haired standard dachshund. And I loved this dog. I just loved the way he looked. He was so cute. I even remember his name was Champion Westfall's Bearing Gifts. So Westfall was Peggy. And so I went to Peggy and I said, Peggy, I would like to have one of those. And she said, well, I don't have anything. And she gave me the name of another breeder. So I went to the other breeder and she didn't have one either. And I just never got what I wanted. And then, I don't know, about a year later, I saw a picture of a PBGV in one of the dog magazines. And I thought, God, that's cute. And the dog that was there was owned by Ann Snelling up in Canada. And so I got in touch with her and I said I would like to have one. And she said, well, we're not selling anything out of the country right now because we're trying to get them recognized in Canada. But, in another year, I should have something for you. So in 1984, I got a bitch from Ann. And that's where it started. And then from there, got really into it and brought over two dogs from the UK, which was the lines of this particular bitch. Brought them in through Canada, so they were registered there as well as in the States to help out the numbers in Canada. And started from there, went to a national, well before AKC recognition in the late 80s. Didn't do anything with either of them The dog up to that point had been the big winner in the miscellaneous and rare breed shows. He was the one who always won because he was a very sound mover. Came to discover, and just talking to the judge afterwards, is why he didn't like the dog, that he was just totally wrong in type.
So
he was sound, but he was not he was a lovely moving dog who happened to be called a PBGV, but was not a very good one. So we became friendly over time, and he invited us to come to England, where he was from, which we did, and saw more over there, and realized that this was in fact the case, that he wasn't correct at all. Brought over 2 more, started all over basically, with new stock, realized that the names in the pedigrees were nothing but names. Didn't know what they looked like, didn't know their strengths, their weaknesses, never mind health issues, knew nothing about them. How do we learn? Well, we have to go back to England to see, and so we started going back, and came to discover that a dog that had been line bred on in our first dog was a petit champion in one European country and a grand champion in another. So he was both a petit basset and a grand basset as he got older. So why would you line breed on that? And this is what people were doing because they'd never researched the pedigree.
It's like a crop.
Yeah, exactly. So we went back and did the homework and revised the breeding program and wound up breeding. Well, we owned the first one to win at Westminster back in 91 or 92. They were recognized after Westminster in 91. Or before they were eligible for Westminster. It was January of 91. So they couldn't go in 91. 92, he won the breed and made the cut in the group. We've never had one win no PBGV won a group until trying to remember when it was, well into this century. We bred a bitch that was the top PBGV of all time, that Clint Livingston showed. Sold her, but better. And the first bitch to win, the first PBGV to win a group at Westminster was out of a bitch that we bred.
So you really made
an impact. Yeah, so we had a real impact. We finished somewhere around 65 or 70 PBGVs and roughly the same number of Goldens over the years, and then owned a good number of PBGVs beyond that because we had to bring in to establish a breeding program. You couldn't start from 2 dogs. A dog and a bitch. You have to have beyond that. And this was well before the breed was well recognized. So I've been doing this a long time.
After such an extensive involvement in real dog breeding and families of dogs, how did you transition to the judging side of things?
Well, we showed our own dogs successfully. And in 1984, the local AKC rep was Frank Harrah. And Frank came over to me and said to me, I want you to apply for golden retrievers, to judge golden retrievers. I said, really? He said, yeah, we need some judges who know the breed. So he walked me through it, and I went through all of the hoops, including proctored breed standard tests and so forth. Not like today, open book. They were real tests like at college. And was approved in 85 for Goldens, and I've been judging ever since. So, oh my God, that's a whole long time, isn't it? It's 35 years plus of judging.
I think it really shows, though, that something that started with just a pet that you enjoyed working with has really made an entire life for you.
At this point, I retired. I sold my boarding kennel back in 2000, and I was lucky enough to be invited to judge overseas starting in the late 80s, actually, I think 89. but much more extensively into the current century in 2000. And so I've done a lot of judging overseas, still do until this year. If things go well next year, I've got appointments in Sweden as well as elsewhere. We'll see what happens with that. And that, everybody I know and what I do now is all dog related one way or the other.
It's pretty impressive. I mean, something that can really change your life in that way.
Well, it was. I helped found the local Golden Retriever Club back in the mid 70s. I was at one point president of that club, president of PBGVCA. Some years later, treasurer for a long time at DJA, and then president for I guess 6-8 years. Take the Lead, of course. I'm one of the founders, so I've been involved with Take the Lead as treasurer most of the time since we started 27 years ago. God, that's scary too when I think about it.
But what an important way to keep this sport alive. And Take the Lead. I think that's such an important thing to talk about, for keeping the sport involved.
Yeah, it did. Take the Lead filled a need that was there, that was unfilled for a long time, and we're lucky that a group of people thought, we really need to do something. There's some money in the sport. We ought to be able to help people who are dying and have no money. Their house is gone, everything's gone. Started, everybody probably knows that story, and I'm not going to repeat it, but it started because somebody died from AIDS in that particular case, and I was wondering how they were going to be buried because they had no money. Their house was about to be foreclosed on, and they literally had nothing, and died that way, and that wasn't right. So something had to be done, and that's where we started. Now, of course, we'll help anybody who's been involved with the sport for 5 years or more, is qualified for assistance, and given out a lot of money over the years.
Really impressive.
Yep.
Looking back on this very diverse and rich background in the sport, how would you guide somebody newer in the sport to shape their life on that trajectory to have the same kind of benefit in their life?
You have to be willing to win gracefully and lose gracefully. You have to understand that we aren't born knowing all the things that we have to know in order to be a good breeder. You have to know structure. You have to know what the breed was meant to do, and why the standard for whatever breed it is calls for what it calls for. It's not arbitrary. It's there. It has to do with their original function. And then we have to try and stay true to that standard. We can't change it because, it wants a dog that's, for argument's sake, 50% of its height is from elbow to ground, and the rest is from elbow to shoulder. And change it into one where it's 30% or 40% of length of leg. You're changing the whole dog. You're changing the proportions of the dog. You make the leg shorter with the same body. Well, guess what? The body is now longer proportionately than it was when the legs were longer. You're changing it. We're making cosmetic changes. Well, a little bit's good, so more is better. And sometimes more isn't better. Sometimes more is worse. You have to understand that and be willing to bend to it, even though you might like additional hair, for argument's sake. And but it's a dog who's only supposed to have a moderate coat. Well, you like a heavy coat. You can't change the breed to meet what you like because you're no longer meeting what the breed is. You want something with more coat, switch to a breed that has more coat.
Turn outward.
Exactly. Don't try and change the breed into something it's not.
I think that's a great way to show that this is something that's bigger than one person.
Yeah, it really is. You have a responsibility not only to yourself, because who wants to produce a bad dog? You want to try at least to produce the best thing you can. but you also want to leave something for those who come after you to work with. Not that you've changed the breed to a point where if you look at a picture of the same breed from 40 years ago, it looks like a totally different breed.
Which is happening.
And that's happened in a lot of breeds. And it's a shame.
It surely is. But I think, the good thing about what people are doing now, or trying to do, is to be aware of how to communicate and share with the next generation of people coming in the sport and kind of guide them in a way that's supportive, but also...
Yeah, you have to be willing to be mentored, and you have to be willing, when you have the experience, to be a mentor. And to spend the time. Yeah, maybe you'd rather go somewhere else, but we have a person who's new, who's asked. I had somebody stop by the booth this morning, and they were actually, as I was coming in, and they said, this dog's been shown 10 times, but it never wins, and I don't understand why. And I said, well, what's happening and why have you done it? And I gave her a couple of ideas, like setting up in front of a mirror and looking at the dog from the distance that a judge would look at the dog. Because you look down at the dog and the feet look fine there, but when you look up, from where the judge is, well, the feet are too far forward.
Yeah.
And you see that when you look in the mirror, but you're not going to see that if you're just looking down on the dog. So those sorts of things. We don't do that. We assume, well, I paid a lot of money for this dog, so it should win. And guess what? It doesn't work that way. So we have to be willing to spend the time to learn, and we have to be willing to spend the time to teach. You have to do both. You have a responsibility, if you'd like to see the sport to continue, to welcome new people, not treat them like they were dirt.
It's a necessary investment.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Pepper, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Likewise.
For the rest of your time here.
Hey, you have a great day.
Thank you.
And wonderful holidays.
You as well.
Thank you.